Alright, what's up YouTube? Welcome back to another video. So this is going to be part 3 of our little Razer Stream controller setup tutorial series that we got going on. In this video I am going to show you how to create a dial and how to make this dial do two functions. So like right here on this kit fox that we've been working on, this dial right here is going to be for the heading, and this outer dial, the big dial, is actually for the altitude. So if we look right here and we see this heading bug, if I spin this dial right here, you see the heading bug spinning right there, that little blue bug, it's rotating. And then if I twist this one, we can see our altitude right there, 700. We can see it going up. It goes up by 100 increments, 100 feet, and it goes down. So that's what we're going to work on. Again, this can be used for everything though. So the way we set this up, you can set it up for your comm radios, your nav radios. You can set it up for your heading gyro bug that you got on Cessnas. You could set it up for the Phoenix, how you go from 100 feet increments to 1,000 feet. Like on the Phoenix, I believe it's 100 for the inner knob right here, 1,000 feet for the outer knob. So you can set it up for all that type of stuff. But I am going to show you just the basics on how to get that going, how to get that started. So we're just going to do this heading bug right here and the altitude right there on this kit fox. So we will go ahead and jump into loop deck. First thing we need to do is go down to this MIDI tab right here. We need to select MIDI dial adjustment. So before, when we're setting up these buttons right here, we use MIDI action. Now for the dials, we need to use MIDI dial adjustment. So we'll click on that. Down here, it'll pop up like it always does. We'll give it a name. We're going to call this heading. We'll call this heading / out dial. That's what we're going to call it, heading / out dial. So right here where it says program change, we're going to change this. We're going to go to CC set. You got to put it on CC set. And then for right here where it says modulation wheel or lever, we're just like the MIDI controls. We have all of these that we can use. So if you scroll down, you got all of these different ones that you can use for different dials. You just can't use the ones that say undefined. Anything that has writing in it, like effect control, general purpose, all that stuff you can use. Just these undefined ones you can't use. But again, there's enough here to fill up all 9 pages of your dials, so you'll never run out. So don't even worry about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with this first one right here, modulation wheel lever. We're just going to click that, set that. Where it says value right here, you always just go between 0 and 127. I put it on 64. You can put it on 63. Doesn't make a difference. I just always use 64. For channel, again, we're always going to use channel 1. Once you have all that set up, we're going to go ahead and save it. I'm not going to change the thumbnail right now, so we just leave it as it is. I'm just going to go ahead and hit save. So now it popped up in our stored MIDI action. So right there, you see these ones have a little finger, like a push button. These are our buttons, and the dial has like a circle right there. So that's how you know the difference between a button and a dial. So we're just going to grab this dial and we're going to drop it on to number 1. So right here, dial number 1, you can see it has a dial, has that circle, and then it says heading alt dial. So that's the name that we gave it. So now this has a dial on it. It's going to be for our heading and altitude. The second step that we got to do is now we got to create a button, because we got to push this dial in right here. We got to be able to push this in to switch between heading mode and altitude mode. So we're going to go to MIDI action right here. We're going to call this heading alt button. And again, we know these first 3 we used. So we're going to use, we use C -2, C sharp -2, D -2. So now for the 4th one, we're going to use D sharp -2. Note play, we always leave it on note play. Velocity, we're going to put it at 50. Duration, we're going to put it at 100. Channel, always leave it on channel 1. We're not going to change the thumbnail on this one. We're going to go ahead and hit save right there. So again, now this popped up under stored MIDI actions. It has a little hand with the finger pushing. That means it's a push button. So we're going to go ahead and drag this over and drop it right on dial 1. So now dial 1 right here says heading alt dial, has the little circle, and it has heading alt button, has the little hand with the push button. So now we have the push button capabilities on this dial right here as well. So now we can go into spad.next. So on spad.next, we're going to go ahead and click on the button. So we can see button 3 right there. It's button 3. That's what this push button is right here. It's button 3. Now if we turn the dial, we can see CC01 is our dial. CC0.1. That's our dial right there. So for the push button, we're going to go ahead and click on that. Make sure you got that red arrow coming down. We're going to go to add event. We're going to go to button pressed. We're going to go to add action. We're going to go to change data value. And this is where it's going to get a little different. We're going to click down here at the bottom where it says new local variable. We're going to click that and we're going to make our own button basically. So what we're going to call this is we're going to say it's called heading underscore altitude selector. That's what we're going to call it. Heading altitude selector. For the session, we want it on our profile. So we'll click it on profile for variable scope. For variable type, we're going to leave it as a number. For display normalizer, we're going to change that and we're going to select no decimal. We want it to be a whole number, 0 or 1. That's what we want. So now we're going to go ahead and hit create. So right there at the target, that's the new button that we just created. For operation, we're going to click on that and we're going to change this to increment. For static value, we're going to put that at 1. For limits, we're going to turn that on and we're going to set the min to 0 and the max to 1. And rollover, again, we're going to turn that on because we want it to reset every time we click it. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And so now you can see we have our increment profile heading altitude selector by 1. So that's the button we just created. So we're going to hit OK again. And you can see it popped up right there. So now every time we press this, it's going to switch between 1 and 0, 0 and 1, 1 and 0, 0 and 1. That's the button we just created. It's just a makeshift button. It doesn't do anything. It's just for our Boolean to change. There's no actual assignment to it. So now we can go to our dial right here. So we're going to go to CC0.1 right there. Now we're going to go to add event. So for dials, you see it says tuner clockwise, tuner counterclockwise. We're going to click on clockwise to start with. And then before we do that, we're going to hit cancel actually. We're going to go to extra. We need to find that heading dial to see which one is associated with our heading dial on our plane. So we go to add data. We're going to go up here and we're going to type in heading. So we see we have 57 items. So we're just going to start from the top, go all the way down. We're going to select it, hit OK, select all of them, hit OK. Now it's going to pop up with a bunch of stuff right there. We can go ahead and hit this little trash can to clear it all out. Now we're going to go back into our plane and we're going to turn this heading dial. So we ended up on 123 degrees. So now we'll go back into spad.next. And we can see all of these heading, autopilot heading lock DIR1, DIR2, DIR3 are all changing as we go. So that means one of those should be fine to use. Heading lock DIR1, DIR2, DIR3. And if we look up here, we can actually see where is our heading lock right here. So if we scroll this over, heading lock, DIR1, DIR2, DIR3, heading lock DIR. So we're just going to use the DIR one, the autopilot heading lock DIR. So we know that one will work. All 4 of these will work. You can select any one. We're just going to select DIR. So we'll go ahead and go back here. We'll go to add event on our CC 0.1, tuner clockwise. We're going to go to add action, change data value. We're going to look for a heading. And again, we're going to look for that heading, autopilot heading lock DIR. You can see it's 123 degrees right here, all of these, and that's what we left it off on the plane. Remember, we switched it, we turned the knob till 123 degrees, and these all say 123 degrees. So we can select any one of these. We're going to go DIR, just the regular one. We're going to hit OK. And now we need to change operation to increment. We want this to increase by 1 every time we turn it clockwise. So we're going to change it by 1. We don't want to set a limit on this because we want it to just keep going all the way around as much as we spin it. We're going to hit OK, and then we're going to hit OK again. So now we have that heading increment by 1. So now if we go back into our plane, and we can see if we turn it clockwise, our heading bug is turning right there. So now we'll go back into spad.next, and now we got to create one for counterclockwise. So we'll go to tuner, counterclockwise, add action, and again, it's just going to leave off on the last thing we selected, so we just got to select OK because it's on autopilot heading lock DIR. Then we got to go to decrement or decrement because we want it to decrease by 1. So we're going to change that operation to decrement. We're going to go static value 1, and we're going to hit OK. And now we're going to hit OK again. And now we have increase by 1, decrease by 1. So if we go back into our plane and we look at our heading bug and we turn it counterclockwise, it's decreasing. Turn it clockwise, it's increasing. Perfect. So that's all fine and dandy. So now we need to go ahead and figure out a way to switch this from this to that knob, the outer knob, the altitude. So we'll go back into spad.next again. First thing we want to do is we want to copy both of these events. So we'll go to edit event, this little drop down. We'll click on that. We'll hit copy all events. Then we'll go ahead and click on that little drop down again. And now we're just going to hit paste. It's going to ask, do you want to replace all events bound to control 01? Hit no. Always hit no. If you hit yes, it's just going to overwrite these top 2 ones that we just created. We don't want that. We want to add 4 of them because we need to change these bottom 2 to the altitude. So how do we find out the altitude? Again, we go back to extra right here, this little plus button. We clear all these out. We go to add data. We type in altitude at the top. We need to find out which one of these parameters is controlled by our altitude knob. So we have 101 items. We can go ahead and click on the top, go all the way down to the bottom, click on the bottom, click OK. We're going to hit this little trash can to delete all of these that are popping up. So right here, we can see if we turn our altitude, we're going to turn it. So we're turning right there. We're going to turn it to 3,300. So now we're just going to go back into spad.next, and we're going to find which one of these values is at 3,300. We can already see right here, autopilot altitude lock VAR, VAR1, VAR2, VAR3 are all at 3,300. So these are what's connected to that knob. So we're just going to use autopilot altitude lock VAR. So we'll clear these, go back to our panels, and now we're just going to change these bottom 2, clockwise and counterclockwise. We're going to click increment. We're going to double click on that. We're going to change our target to altitude. We're going to type that in, and we need autopilot altitude lock VAR. So right there, 3,300 feet. That's the one we need. We're going to click on that. We're going to click OK. For increment, we're going to leave it the way it is. For static value, though, we need to change this to 100 because the altitude increases and decreases by 100. It doesn't increase and decrease by 1 foot. It increases and decreases by 100 feet. So we need to make sure this is set to 100. Now we hit OK, and that's perfect. It's set up. We're going to hit OK again. Now we're going to do the same thing for this last one for counterclockwise. Double click on it, double click on this one right here, and then we're going to change this to altitude again. So we're going to type in altitude, and we're going to find that autopilot altitude lock VAR right there. Hit OK. It's set to decrement. That's what we want. We want it to decrease, and we want it to decrease by 100 because we want it to decrease by 100 feet. Once you hit OK there, go ahead and hit OK down here. So now we have our heading lock and our autopilot altitude lock. Heading is by 1 degree, altitude by 100 feet, increase and decrease. But how do we get it to switch between the two? This is where the button that we created comes into play. So starting from the top, we're going to hit this heading lock clockwise turn. We're going to double click it. And now we're going to go to add a condition. So we want this condition to be our button. We're going to hit add condition. We're going to click browse right there. And we're going to go to profile because that's where we saved our button in. We saved it in the profile tab. So we want to do the profile heading altitude selector. That's the one we created, profile heading altitude selector. We're going to click OK. When this altitude selector equals 0, it's going to be on the heading mode. So we'll just leave it the way it is. So when profile altitude selector equals 0, it's going to be the heading So we're going to hit OK. We're going to do the same thing for the decrement of the heading. We're going to go to add condition, browse. Profile heading altitude selector is already selected for us. We're going to hit OK. Equals 0. That's fine. So when profile heading altitude selector equals 0, it's going to be for our heading lock. We're going to hit OK right there. Now we're going to go for our altitude. So we're going to double click on that. We're going to add a condition. We're going to go to browse. We're going to hit that same altitude selector. We're going to select that. When it equals, we're going to change this to 1 though. So every time we press that button, it's going to switch and that's going to control our altitude. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK here. So right now you can see we didn't press that button, so it's not on altitude, it's on heading. Once we push that button, it'll change to 1, and then it'll change this to control this. So we go ahead and hit OK right there. Decrement, we're going to do the same thing, add condition, browse, add to altitude selector, hit OK. When this equals 1, it's OK. So now we're going to go ahead and hit OK at the bottom again. So now we have this. So when it's 0, it's going to be on heading. When the button's on 1, it's going to be on altitude. So we can go back to our sim, and now we can test it out. We can press this button right here, or we can turn the knob first so we can see our heading is turning. Now if we press the button, now if we look at our altitude, now our altitude's going up by 100 feet. If we press it again, now it's going to go back to our heading bug. And if we press it one more time, now it's going back to our altitude. So that's how you make one dial have the inner outer knob function. Again, you can do this for everything, for your comm radios, nav radios. Comm radios and nav radios, you can have it be to the right of the decimal and then the left of the decimal, just like how they have inner outer. Phoenix, you can do the 100 feet, 1000 feet. For all the Cessnas, for their heading bugs, how they have the heading and the gyro, you can do it for inner and outer. This is going to work for everything. So when you do create the button for those though, you would just name it different. You name it heading gyro. You can name it 100, 1000 altitude. You can name it comm decimals or whatever you want. You can name it however you want. But this is how you basically set up these dials. I hope this really helped. If you have any questions or comments, leave it down below. And if you want any more tutorials on any other stuff, please leave it down in the comments below. I'll try to make a video on it. But yeah, until the next video, just fly safe.